Hi everyone, Kevin Pollock here at Bristoe Station Battlefield Heritage Park. I'm standing right what was once the middle of a bustling farmstead owned by Thomas Davis, who was the former sheriff of Prince William County back in the 1850s. Of course, as you can see around me, there is basically nothing left. There is really nothing left of Davis's former home here on what's now the Bristoe Station Battlefield. But Davis is a very interesting character, and so often when we get caught up doing battlefield tours, we focus so much on the soldiers that were here, but we often forget about the civilians who are living on this ground that became a battlefield at different points during the Civil War. So by 1861, when the Civil War began, Thomas Davis was not in favor of secession, and the Confederate troops that were here camped on his grounds in 1861 and into early 1862 really treated him poorly because of that. In fact, when the Confederates pulled out of this area in early March of 1862, Thomas Davis later attested to the first Union soldiers that came to visit him here and came to occupy Bristoe Station that Confederates would often take shots at Davis, trying to really force him into the Confederate Army, but Davis ultimately would not. His home would suffer quite a bit during the course of the Civil War. Many of his fences were torn down and used for firewood. His house was used as a hospital and a headquarters at various points, and it got so bad that eventually Thomas Davis left the area in September 1863 and did not return until the end of the American Civil War. But after the Civil War in the 1870s, Davis applied for damage reparations that were done to his property, and he claimed that Union soldiers did $12,716 worth of damage to the Davis farmstead. In today's currency, that's close to $270,000 worth of money and worth of damages. Now, Davis's story did not end, though, when he moved back here to Bristoe Station after the Civil War. His story really continued. He worked as the mail contractor between Bristoe Station and just up the road, one of our other historic sites at Brentsville Courthouse. And Davis had a horse that was known by all the locals as Old Tom, that Davis would ride every single day back and forth between Bristoe Station and Brentsville. Well, unfortunately, one morning, Thomas Davis's young son was playing with a firearm in the stable, and supposedly he accidentally shot Old Tom. Old Tom survived and was right back on the mail track within just a couple of weeks, incredibly enough. But Davis's son was apparently quite the troublemaker. Just abutting the Davis homestead is the tracks of the Orange and Alexandria Railroad. And at one point, Davis's young 10-year-old son in 1875 was throwing rocks onto the railroad tracks. A passenger train happened to be driving by, and one of those rocks passed through one of the passenger car windows and struck a lady. We only know her as Mrs. Bacon from Atlanta, Georgia. Charges were actually pressed against Davis's 10-year-old son, and being the former sheriff of Prince William County, he was probably in an odd spot, an odd situation. But Davis did bring his son over to Brentsville Courthouse to have him arraigned and to be heard for a trial. Charges were pressed against Davis's son, but ultimately no witnesses showed up for the trial, and so Davis's 10-year-old son got off just fine without any charges being pressed against him. But again, it's so easy to often forget the civilians that were here and how they suffered, and also some of the amazing stories that they had as well when they lived on the land that once was fought over twice and was the site of two major encampments, one Confederate and one Union, during the course of the American Civil War.